In today's video, I want to chat to you guys about the responsibilities of business owners. Good day, my name is Heinrich Rivera. I'm the owner of SA Accounting Network and I've been in the accounting industry since 2008 and so I've been around the block a couple of times when it comes just to running businesses and the responsibilities of business owners, and that is what I want to unpack a little bit with you guys today. Of late, I've had a couple of interesting queries where people contacted me and said, listen, I started a business 5 years ago. They opened up a bank account and they just started invoicing and they're just putting money through that account, but they've done nothing further than that. So that is maybe just what I want to just discuss with you guys today. So I've prepared a nice presentation that I want to run through. But before I start with that, just remember once again, just to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and then let me head down to my computer. Then I can show you what I prepared for you guys in terms of the responsibilities or the duties of business owners. Great, let's have a look. So, responsibilities of business owners in South Africa. I think the main things that I'm going to focus on today, just briefly, is I'm just going to touch on record keeping. I'm going to be talking at CIPC. So those are the guys who register companies, what your duties or responsibilities are there, the receiver of revenue, the Department of Labor, and then first thing, record keeping. For every business owner, you have the responsibility that he must keep accurate record of what's happening inside your business. So at the end of the year, you must be able to produce some form of income statement. So income statement is something that it shows the sales for the year, your cost of sales, your gross profit, all the expenses and your profit, because that, and then obviously there needs to be some form of a balance sheet so you can see what your assets are, what your liabilities are, and what your equity is in the business. And it's important that as a basic, as a starting point, you need to have something in place that can produce those type of records. So the old thing, you still had the old cash books where you would manually sit and write stuff inside a book itself so you can keep track of what the income is and what the expenses are. The old people used to use the cigarette boxes, and at the back of the cigarette box they would write what's their sales and the cost of sales and stuff. And that was probably the most accurate thing, because that guy, you can ask him any time of the day and he would know exactly what's happening inside his business. But for the receiver of revenue, cigarette boxes won't float, unfortunately. So you need to have some form of record keeping in place. And the second way that you can do it is if you do something electronic, and there's also a couple of different formats that you can use. There's something like an Excel spreadsheet if it's a very small business and you just sell basically just on cash. We don't send invoices and wait for people to pay, then Excel is fine. If you start looking at more formal type of packages, then you would be looking at stuff like QuickBooks and Sage and Zero Accounting, or even the old Pastel or the old QuickBooks Desktop. I've done a whole separate video on that as well about the electronic record keeping system, so you can go check out that video when you get a chance. And I just briefly talked about financial statements. So at the end of the year, you must be able to produce something to say what your total sales was, what your expenses was, what your assets is, your liabilities and equity, because that is obviously the data that you're going to be using when you're doing your company tax returns, which is also one of the duties. We'll talk about SARS now, what your duties are there. And I think just the other important thing as well is you must keep some form of a filing system as well. It's really, really important. I've done 2 videos as well in the past, one about manual filing systems, other one electronic filing systems, so go check those ones out. So if you don't keep your slips and don't keep your supply invoices and stuff like that, SARS comes and does an audit and you can't give them the proof of those expenses, then they're going to assume that you took the money for yourself, and then in your personal capacity you're going to have to pay the tax on that. So it's really, really important that you must have a filing system in place. It doesn't need to be a big filing system, but if they ask for some documents, you must be able to retrieve it to produce it for the receiver of revenue. And I think those are the main guys that actually look at your record keeping. That's the purpose why I do it, is obviously to make sure that you stay compliant, but then also obviously for your own internal purposes as well, so you can actually see whether you're making money in your business or not. So record keeping, that's the first duty or the first responsibility of business owners. Second thing, CIPC. So if you register a company, remember these guys, CIPC, or they used to call them CIPRO, those are the people that register the companies and maintain the details of companies. So there, you've got 3 things that you need to do over there. First thing is any changes to a company. So if you move address, or if you change directors or change names of companies, it's got to be registered with CIPC. If you don't do it, you can get into trouble. It's really, really important. The second thing that you need to do with CIPC as well is once a year, there's a return that you need to file, which they call the annual return. So that is in the birthday month of your company. So if your company was registered in January, then every year, January, you need to file that annual return. If you don't file those annual returns, then you can get into trouble. The banks can just stop your business account. They can just close the account. You'll still think you'll be trading, and the next minute you can't access any of your stuff. That's because CIPC went and deregistered that company. And I think where there's a big risk, we haven't seen it that much lately as well, is if you own a property and the property is registered inside a company and you don't file these returns, then in theory that property becomes government property. So then to reinstate that company as a mission, you have to put stuff notices in the newspapers, and you have to get letters from government departments where they give you permission to reinstate that company. So there's a really big risk. And then I think the other thing as well that is still quite new on the scene at the moment is beneficial ownership return. So every time you do any form of change in a company, where there's a change in shareholders or directors, no shareholders, shareholding of a company, you need to file this beneficial ownership returns, and you need to do it on a yearly basis together with the annual return. So CIPC, those are the three responsibilities or the three duties for you as a director of a company or as an owner of a small business. The next one, now we come to the big one, is the receiver of revenue. Remember, for SARS, there's basically three taxes that you can register for as a business owner. Income tax, so the day you register your company, it's automatically registered for company tax. As soon as you employ somebody, then the company gets registered for pay as you earn, or it must get registered for pay as you earn. And then the third one is VAT. So those are the three main taxes we're going to look at. Income tax, so your responsibility in terms of income tax is you must keep proper records of your income and expenses, so that at the end of the year you can file your company tax return. So once a year there's a company tax return that needs to happen. So they say for companies it needs to happen within 12 months after your year end. So if your year end is February 2023, then by February 2024 you need to submit your company tax return to let the receiver of revenue know what happened during the previous 12 months or inside that financial year. Next one is provisional tax. So during the year, you'll see that I did a video of how income tax works, and I unpacked this a little bit over there. But during the year, twice a year, so in August normally, it's halfway through your financial year, and then at the year end, you get an opportunity to pay over provisional tax, where you can pay tax over to the receiver of revenue, so you can get a tax credit on the system. So when you file that final tax return, and you owe SARS maybe like 100,000 Rand, then you've already paid the tax in the same period where you earned the money, so that you don't sit with a huge tax liability then. So that is what provisional tax is for. Pay as you earn returns. Remember, as soon as you employ somebody, then you have to register for pay as you earn. So pay as you earn is this, the tax that you deduct from people's salary, and the receiver of revenue says that it needs to be paid over by the 7th of the following month. So if you're doing salaries now for October, then it means by the 7th of November you have to pay over the pay as you earn, skills development levy, UIF over to the receiver of revenue by the 7th or the last working day before the 7th of the month. Pay as you earn reconciliations, that's a thing that you need to do twice a year. So that's normally in August and in February, where remember you deducted pay as you earn now for the previous 6 months. So in that 6 months, you need to send SARS a reconciliation to say who the tax was deducted for, what those people earned, and what the tax amounts are. At the end of the year, you do a second reconciliation again, but that one is going to cover the full year. So as soon as you submit that reconciliation, then you issue the tax certificates to employees, which they call IP5 certificates. So that is another responsibility. VAT returns, remember that if you register your business and your turnover hits R1 million, you must register for value-added tax. You haven't got a choice, it's compulsory then. Then every second month you need to pay over the VAT that you claimed or that you charged your clients, and then obviously from that you can deduct the expenses, the allowable VAT that you paid on certain expenses. I've done a separate video on VAT returns, so you guys can go check it out. And then the last one with the receiver of revenue, this dividend tax return. So if you're sitting with big profits, you decide to want to take dividends out of the business, then you need to submit your dividends tax return. So those are the main responsibilities or duties of business owners when it comes to the receiver of revenue. Next, Department of Labor. So remember, if you employ somebody, as mentioned just now, that you have to register them for pay as you earn. Department of Labor, they say if somebody works for you longer than 24 hours a month, you must register them for UIF. And they say workman compensation as well, as that it's compulsory for all companies. They must register for workman compensation. Remember, that is when people get hurt on the job and you maybe break a leg, then you can take them to the hospital, and workman compensation then covers the medical expenses for those people. So Department of Labor, don't forget about that one. We're seeing a lot of labor inspections coming through, so it's really, really important. And I think becomes urgent, or when people only realize this, is if something goes wrong. Let's say, for instance, you fire one of your employees, they run to the Department of Labor, and then it comes out that he never registered, then you're going to sit with big problems, because then you have them all over you. If somebody gets hurt on the job and you guys haven't registered the people for UIF, then there's a really big risk over there as well. And I think I just jotted it down there as well. Employee records, remember, for you as an employer, one of your duties is you need to make sure that you keep record of that person's employee contract. You must have a copy of his ID, you must have his address, you must have his tax number, you must keep record of the leave and the sick leave and all that type of stuff. So I've done a whole complete different video on that as well, how to employ somebody, so you can go check out that video over there. And I think, so that is in a nutshell what your duties and what your responsibilities are as business owners. Is really, really important that you must do this stuff, because if you delay, if you don't do these things, and now it's like 5 years later, and all of a sudden you've got to catch up for the previous 5 years stuff, plus do financial statements, plus submit the rear pays in returns and VAT returns and stuff, then it's going to become a nightmare. So the earlier you can get these things in place and make sure that you are compliant and that you stay compliant, the better the chances are that your business is going to succeed. Remember once again that if you are maybe looking for a new accountant, check in the description of this video. I'll share some contact details over there of people you can contact to help you sort out all your stuff. If your stuff is maybe in arrears, remember once again just to give the video a like. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and see you guys for the next video.